If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of 3. Join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth and postnatal recovery, helping you have a wonderful pregnancy and afterbirth experience. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 27 of the Fitness Mama podcast. I am your host, Kath Bequee. I'm a mum of 3 young girls, a physiotherapist for women, and I have an online community, Fitness Mama, which helps to provide pregnant and new mothers with the exercises, support, and resources they need to move from the feeling of blur or the physical aches and pains of pregnancy, the weakness felt after birth, and instead we replace that with the comfort and confidence they need to get their bodies and minds strong again so that they can get back to doing what they love with a bubba by their side, whether or not that's running around with the kids at the park or running the next marathon. Today's episode is fun. I chat to the lovely Jen Butler, who is a midwife, maternal child health nurse, sleep consultant, lactation consultant, and soon-to-be mum of 3. And she's an absolute wealth of knowledge. I asked Jen to share her top few tips for dealing with life with a newborn. 4th trimester, where, let's be honest, is where your whole world changes once your bubba is born. So stick around. And before we do jump into this episode, I want to let you know about the Fitness Mama free online class. In my 45-minute jam-packed class, you'll learn about my 5-step framework for healthy pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery, helping to reduce overwhelm and feel confident and get back to doing what you love sooner. Plus, you'll learn the 4 biggest mistakes pregnant and new mamas make when it comes to regaining their strength and how to avoid these mistakes. We also discuss why the old saying, your body will know what to do, is terrible advice. And we dive into the simple strategies to focus on instead to help you recover from birth sooner. To sign up for this free online class, head to www.fitnessmama.com/free and the link is in the show notes. All right, let's get into the show. Hello, Jen. Welcome to the Fitness Mama podcast.
Hello, Kath. Very excited to be here.
It is exciting. We chatted just recently for your podcast and now here we are again. So thank you.
Can't get enough of each other.
And we've just probably we've just been chatting for like half an hour before we've even hit record.
So maybe we should actually start recording that so people can just be like a fly on the wall listening to our conversation.
Absolutely. So could you please introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are?
Absolutely. So my name's Jen and my business is Jen Butler Early Parenting Support. Very original using my name. But my early parenting support encompasses everything really that you need to know in those first 4 years in understanding your baby, your toddler, your child. So sleep, feeding, health, development, all that wonderful world. So it's a really holistic look that I sort of go for. My background is that I'm a maternal and child health nurse, a sleep consultant, a midwife, nurse, circle of security facilitator, and lactation consultant. Sometimes I forget what I've done. But, you know, all of those things have allowed me to really bring in this, what I consider a very lovely holistic approach looking at your baby and toddler.
Absolutely. And you are what every new mum needs. In a nutshell, it's perfect. So today I was hoping to chat to you about that early afterbirth period. So, you know, you're pregnant and you think, yeah, I've got this all figured. This was me I'm talking about. I was like, yeah, this whole parenting gig, I've seen this happen before. And then you have your baby and everything's great in hospital. And then you come home and your world is turned upside down. So this is where you step in.
Yeah, I'm just nodding my head like it is the story, isn't it? Like I don't know very many mums, new mums especially, who bring their babies home and don't get hit with that like, holy crap, this isn't what I expected, or this is hard, you know?
They let me out of hospital?
Yeah.
What do I do?
And what do you mean I'm allowed to take this baby home? Like, are you sure? I haven't got my certificate.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask what your top tips were, and we'll run through them in order. I don't even know how many tips you've got. Like, we will have to cut you off at some point.
Yeah, I know. It's like, where do I begin? Yeah.
So, like, maybe top 3 or 4 tips, whatever. Let's just start from the start. You come home from hospital. What would you be your number 1 tip for all new mums?
Well, you know what? If you have any pregnant listeners, I'm going to take it back one step, and I'm actually going to give my top tip for any of the pregnant listeners and say that if you can do a little bit, like allow a little bit of time to learn about what it's actually like to look after a baby. Like, I think that there's a massive disservice to new mums, not just new mums, like second, third, whatever. I just think I say new mums a lot because you've got the wisdom at least second, third, fourth time. You've done it before.
Yeah.
The first time mums, like everyone's like birth, focus on the birth, learn about the stages of labour, so important, but it ends up being one day of your life. And I definitely don't underestimate the importance of it. And I'm in the midst of a 29 weeks prepping for my 3rd baby's birth. But if you just have a little bit of insight into what to expect, what's normal sleep patterns, what's normal newborn behaviour, like what's some of the things you might come up against with feeding? Like, do you want to breastfeed? Like, what can you learn about breastfeeding? Like, all these things, you can actually learn them before your baby comes. So that's actually going to form my number 1 tip, because I think that preparation is key. And it doesn't mean like there is absolutely so much that's just going to happen and that you're going to learn once your baby's here, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't spend at least a little bit of time. If you're spending all this time preparing for birth, allow a fraction of that time to at least start to think about what's going to happen afterwards.
100% agree from first-hand experience, and
yes.
Way too much attention is on the childbirth, which I can understand why, because that's at the forefront of your mind. It's full on. But I say this similar thing to my pregnant mums from my perspective, being the physio for women. And I say, okay, during pregnancy, let's prepare for your after-birth recovery, for your postnatal rehab. What are the steps that you need to do? When do you need to go see someone? How much can you do and when? So it's a similar sort of concept, isn't it? But you're thinking about it from the baby's perspective.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking about it from the mum's.
Absolutely. And that's exactly right. Is there's so much mentally, like if you talk, I actually did a birth panel yesterday where there was, like a clinical psychologist, and she was talking about it from that mindset, relationships with your partner point of view. And I was like, at least I've done it twice before to know what to expect to have those conversations with my husband. But yes, I definitely come at it from, there are skills you are going to have to know. There is knowledge you're going to have to know. And that's where I think I come into things, is like, here's what you need to know. Here's the skills. Here's the things that I know, like babies follow a pretty predictable sequence of development. There's variations, of course, but it is like guaranteed, if I'm talking to a group of mums who have newborns, that the questions are always the same. And then it will shift to like a 3 to 6 month and the questions are always the same, because your babies are going through the same stuff at different times. So that forms, I think, my number 1 tip is, if you are pregnant and listening to this, preparation to some form is your best place to start.
So whether or not that's chatting to your doctor or listening to podcasts or joining a course or a membership such as yours, or
that's exactly right. Like, if people are thinking, well, what do I do? And it's probably actually a really good thing to touch upon, because there's some really dodgy advice out there. So I got sucked into this. I remember reading this, I'm not going to name it. It's a very popular sleep and settling book. And I remember reading it being like, simple. It's all right. Well, we'll just, put bub down at this time and they'll sleep until then. And then we'll do the dream feed at this time. And oh my God, like, how easy is this going to be?
Yeah.
Well, surprise, my baby did not fit that book.
This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby B let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
I think I was in a similar boat. My baby was 8 years ago. So we didn't have Instagram, my first baby, didn't have Instagram or all these amazing courses and memberships, and, you know, the access to health professionals wasn't as easy, I don't think. And so I latched onto a book that I'd heard was great. And again, I won't name names, but I felt like it was my lifesaver. It was all I had, and it told me even how to clean the bottles. And I was like, I didn't know, this is amazing. But it made me so stressed. I remember being so stressed, and I remember my mother-in-law telling me to burn that book. And that stressed me even more, because I was like, if I don't do this book, what do I do? Like,
What have I got? Yes.
I've got to have something.
100%. And I think that's really where mums get caught is, I mean, we're all different in our personalities. Like, I know that some mums are really good at just winging it. Just, you know, I'll learn on the fly and I'll be fine. And I find that they're just innately that more chilled out personality.
Yeah.
I'd love to say that was me, but I know who I am as a person, and I need to understand things to feel in control. And so we're all uniquely us, and that's why we're all going to experience motherhood very, very differently. It was, for me, such a loss of control, and to regain that, I was searching for the answers in these, like that you can just be handed a book and that's that there you go.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, it's not that simple. And some of these books, they do work great for some families. Like, don't get me wrong. If anyone listens and they're like, oh, it's been great for me, that's awesome. But you probably are the minority. It's mostly the majority that it doesn't actually work for. So that's why I don't believe in a cookie cutter approach. I believe that there's things that you need to know about your baby and your toddler that normalizes where they're at developmentally, and then there's going to be huge fluctuations, and it's about sort of being able to learn, well, how do we deal with those fluctuations? Like, you know.
Yeah, what are a few strategies that might help?
Exactly. That's exactly right. So
when did you become a midwife?
So I graduated from my double degree in 2010, I want to say.
And how old's your oldest?
He is 6 in 2 weeks, Max.
Okay.
Will be 6.
Jen, that is really comforting to know that you have so much knowledge and you had such a good base, and you were still blown away by your first. It's really comforting.
This is what I say to people. I was not only just a midwife by the time I had Max, I was a maternal and child health nurse. And so our bread and butter is 0 to 4, understanding what they need. And I soon realised that no, we do not. They have not taught. I think it's actually getting better. I haven't worked as a maternal and child health nurse now since I've started my own business, but I know that they're improving the training around sleep and settling, because at the time we were taught 2 ways of teaching your baby to sleep. There was no thought about any of the other areas that impact sleep other than just the settling, which, FYI, there is so much more involved in just putting your baby to sleep. And it was controlled crying, or I can't even think of what the other one, but that was it. And there's so many more options, and this is, massively what needs to be worked on.
Absolutely. Great tip. That was tip number 1.
Tip number 1 got blown out of the water.
Love it. Right. If that was tip number 1, what's tip number 2, Jen?
Obviously, tip number 1 is about that education. I would say that tip number 2 is understand, and I really, really want people to listen to me when I say this, because I think sometimes we can hear this advice but then not actually act on it. And it is rally your village. Like, when you get home, you are going to need to, it's not just on mum. It is not just up to you to solely look after this baby, to feed this baby, to settle this baby. I know that mums have to do a lot. Like, we're the ones that if you're breastfeeding, it's all on us. But that's the thing, is it's not. And so, like, even though you might be breastfeeding, what can your partner do to do the settling once you've finished your feed? Like, or can you get up and do a wee in the middle of the night? And while, you know, your partner holds the baby, you know what I mean? Like, just starting to have these conversations. And the other part of that too is like looking outside of baby care and going, okay, what can I do to make my life easier in other ways? So really the first 6 weeks, your focus should be rest and recovery for yourself. And it should be about just getting to know your little baby. Like, and I know, like, I think after my second son, I was actually like, just throw yourself back into it. And I don't know whether it was to prove that to myself but I remember I got really bad chest infection in about 3 months because I was worn out. I was worn down. I did not look after myself. And I was talking this with my husband the other night. I said, remember when Ted was like just a baby and he was sleeping, like he was having good chunks of 3-4 hours at night, and I was up coughing with this bloody chest infection. So, you know, it's just that if I had outsourced those other areas of my life and I could have just concentrated on feeding my baby and settling, and that might sound really dull, you know, when you're just stuck at home doing that. But at the end of the day, it's what's most important in that time of your life. It's such a short period.
Oh, 100%.
Like, what's 6 weeks, even 12 weeks, really?
Exactly. And coming from it from a pelvic floor perspective, you need that rest period. And that's what I said all my mums, you know, first 6 weeks rest. That's part of your recovery. If you had if you were an AFL player and you had surgery for an injury, you would have a period of rest where you rest.
And like, it's true. Like, if you I love that analogy that if you treat it like a sports injury, anyone who is like plays sport or has played sport in the past, I think it's so good for them to be like, yes, like you would rest and ice and elevate and
yes.
all
compress
of the analogy.
Yep. And then start really gentle rehab.
Yeah.
Really gentle. So, yeah.
When you break that down, it's like that's what you need. You need it to understand your baby. You need it to rest your body. You need it to rest your mind and to allow the transition that is happening right in front of your very eyes.
And Jen, that all makes sense, and I'm nodding my head and saying, yes, that's what we need, that's what we need. But I still distinctly remember, you know, I was one of the first of my friends to have a baby, and I was almost a bit in denial. I thought, you know, no, my friends are going out for coffee. I'm going to go and catch up with them. And I walked too far and, you know, felt pelvic heaviness by the end of the day, which is a sign of prolapse, and I knew I'd done too much. And mother-in-law is amazing, and she'd offer to help, and I'd say, no, I'm fine. I don't need help. Yeah, it was a bit silly in hindsight.
So it's sort of like with Max, I was stuck at home and I actually found myself very lonely and isolated, and it wasn't good for my mental health. And so then with Ted, I was like, all right, I'm just going to get out there. It's going to be good for my mental health. So third time, exactly.
Yeah.
Third time round, I think that fingers crossed, I'm going to strike a balance. I'm going to strike a balance between, I know who I am. I am an extroverted person. I get energy from being around people. But sometimes you need to take a step back. And you know what? COVID has actually made me so much better at being comfortable at just being home in my own company. So in a sense, I'm probably better trained than I ever have been. And I think my thing at the end of the day is it is only going to be short, like at least 6 weeks. Give myself 6 weeks to just chill, get used to this new transition of having 3 children. Like 6 weeks feels like a long time when you're home alone trying to understand this baby. But that's all your job is to understand your baby and get to know them. It's not going to just happen in 6 weeks, FYI. You're not going to get to the 6-week mark and be like, okay, I get it. Tick. But it's sure as hell going to help.
Yeah. Now when I go and visit a new mum, I say, you know, sit down, and then I go to the fridge. I'm like, okay, what can I chop for dinner tonight? So we're still chatting, and I've tried to make it, that's my thing, is I'm going to try to help. So I think mums need to get better asking as well, because everyone's happy to give help and you want to give help, right? But often you don't like to ask for it. So for the new mums out there, don't hesitate when you have people coming over to ask them to just do one small little thing for you that would help to lighten the load.
People don't like to ask for help because it's perceived as a sign of weakness, or it feels uncomfortable. And it's like, okay, you know, there are going to be people that you feel more comfortable with asking for help and not, but they're the people that you want to have in your postpartum period, not the people who are, that if you don't feel comfortable in them being around without you sort of being like, do you mind just doing this while I just feed the baby, or, you know, something like this, then I would say they can be your later visitors.
You have tiered visitors. So 0 to 6 weeks is top tier.
The people that are really good at helping, they're allowed to come 0 to 6 weeks. 6 to 12 weeks are the people who,
second
they're
grade.
On
funny.
Just don't tell them what tier they're in, okay?
No. Well, it'll be obvious if they listen to this
Yeah,
podcast.
I know, exactly. Awkward.
Funny. Okay, I love that tip, totally. And I wish I'd taken that tip on board for my first and second. I was much better by my third, and that was my best recovery with 3 kids, because it's like I submitted. It's like, yep, I'm not leaving the house. If you want to come see me, you come round. And they entertained my older kids for me while I breastfed. It was perfect. And it was my best recovery because I didn't do much.
In my head, I know how I'm going to be approaching this at time, and like mentally, yep, you're a bit more isolated, but I know how important it is. The power of retrospect, hey?
It's great, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
It'd be amazing if I did it all again.
And let this, you know, if you've had 3, I'm about to have my third, like let our retrospect drive those who's having or had their first, you know.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we've lived this, what we've lived, and now we can share that experience.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're sharing it, isn't it? To help other mamas.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Cool.
So tip number 3, lucky last.
Yep. Great.
Tip number 3 is all about not being afraid to seek help when things are beyond what you're coping with. I mean, that's a very, very broad overlook, but I'm talking like from my point of view, I think that what the stories I hear from new mums, what I see, what I experienced myself is that I was floundering. Like I had a lot of feeding issues. So in the end, my son had tongue ties that needed to be revised, blah, blah, blah. I should have got help so much earlier than what I did. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know if it was a reflection of me thinking, you should know this, Jen. Like you're a midwife, you're a maternal child health nurse. Like it was a little bit of a pride thing. I think we all have our different reasons why we might not. It could be financial. It could be pride.
It could be time.
Being
so exhausted and unable to.
Exhausted, like accessibility. Like there is a lot of reasons why we will hold off. But if you're just not managing, if you're feeling completely out of control, you need to make that time. You need to make that investment. You need to call upon someone. And that difficulty that it will take to do that is going to bring you so much calm. It's like that sort of, you need to take a step back to move forward. That's what I'm trying to say is, yes, it can seem hard, but geez, it's worth it.
Yeah. So easy people to contact. Who would you recommend in those early days? So maternal child health nurse, GP.
Yeah, GP. And the thing is too, is that the beauty about not only COVID, but just in general, is there is so much online now, and you can actually get incredible support being online. And so you don't even have to leave home, and you can have online consults. Like some stuff requires you to be physically assessed or your baby physically assessed, but there's also a lot that is information sharing, or that can be like, I even do lactation visits online where you can actually send videos of a full feed. I can observe you feed, and this is not just me, this is other IBCLCs too. And they can assess that.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I think we're lucky. Like we are so lucky to live in a world where accessibility is so much easier than what it was, like instead of always having to go to centres.
Yeah.
And people can come to you too.
I haven't quite worked that one out with a pelvic floor assessment yet. So I do so much education and information with my membership, but I'll always say to my mums, if you've got issues with leaking, continence, come and see me for a face-to-face, because unfortunately a vaginal examination can't be,
I
maybe
know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I do not know how in the world it will ever get to that. You know,
It
like
won't
I even
ever.
think some physios actually could do it where you have to look at range of motion but with the pelvic
Oh,
floor.
yeah, I can assess a DRAM.
Yeah.
I can assess an abdominal muscle separation virtually and, tell you how to assess it and feel it and whatnot. But a pelvic floor, haven't worked that one out yet.
No. Maybe in the future, Kath.
Maybe we'll develop some technology. Absolutely. I won't be.
Yeah. Someone can do that for
Someone
you.
else. Love it. So
Yeah.
number 1 was prepare during pregnancy. Prepare as
Number
much as
2.
you can. Number
Yeah.
2 was get your tribe, get your village on
Get
board.
your tribe and take that time to just learn about your babe and outsource that other stuff basically, so you can just take that time getting to know your new baby. And then number 3, it's kind of like a late approach. It's like, let's first try and learn what we can before we have a baby. Number 2 is spend those early weeks getting to know your baby and outsource the rest with your village. And then number 3 is then get the help you need when you need it.
For the situation. Yeah. Love it. Totally makes sense. Sounds easy.
Now, I
Easy,
make it
right?
sound easy, but like when you are in the depths of sleep deprivation and learning everything new, sometimes I just talk to so many families and it's like, oh my God, I put this off for so long. Like I hear the same things over and over. And like even recently I was starting to feel a bit flat in pregnancy and just, knew I needed to speak to my naturopath. Probably took me 2 weeks to book in with her. And so now, and then I had to wait another 2 weeks. And so we do just inevitably, like the thought pops into our head and then we're busy.
Yeah, it's like that with everything, right?
Everything.
Exercise. I'll do it today. Nah, wait for another week.
Exactly. All right.
Unless you're in my membership, then you don't.
Exactly. And so this is it, is that eventually you've got to prioritize and something will trigger you that you're like, all right, something needs to happen.
Yeah, lovely. So for anyone listening who wants to find out more about you and your program, how can they find you?
In terms of socials, I hang out a lot, too much. Let's be honest, too much. I hang out too much on Instagram. My tags at Jen Butler Early Parenting. Early parenting support or early parenting? I can't remember.
The links will be in the show notes. Jen, you need to...
Seriously, baby brain, I'm telling you.
You need to know that one, Jen.
Heavens. Oh, guys, at Jen Butler Early Parenting, I'm sure you'll find me. If there's a support at the end, I'm sure my name will pop up.
It'll be a copycat.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's done like a rip-off account. And you can find me on my website too, so www.jenniferbutler.com.au, and I've got all links to my program. So I've got 2 main programs, just to give it a little bit of context. I have a membership, which is the Happy Baby Code. It's a open close, so it's not always open, but I always have a waiting list open to take names. So I'll give Kath that link so that if anyone's interested in popping their name down on the waiting list for when I next open the doors. And it is everything I'm talking about: the feeding, the sleep, the health, the development from birth through to 3 years. This is how to understand your baby, and that sees me a lot in the membership, supporting you through that as well.
So they get that support from you?
Yeah.
inside
Yes.
the membership?
Part of that membership is all of the lessons that teach you all of these things, and then it's twice monthly Q&As where I answer all the mums' questions, and a wonderful community. Like it is, it is so cool.
Yeah.
You can't plan these things with a community, and the girls inside the membership right now, there is such camaraderie and sisterhood, and I'm like, you can't plan this stuff. So
That's beautiful.
it's amazing. I love it, and I love being a part of that. So that is my membership, the Happy Baby Code. And then I also have a course, so a program called the Sound Sleeper Program. And that is everything you need to know and very specific to understanding the sleep picture. And that takes you from birth through to 3 years as well.
Cool.
So that can be found on my website as well.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put all the links in the show notes.
And I've got a podcast. That's what I was going to say too. The
Yes.
Early Parenting Podcast, if anyone wants to check that out. I remembered the name of that. How clever.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jen. It was fun. I'll have to have you on again soon.
Absolutely. I'd always love to come back on, Kath.
We'll chat about sleep next time.
I'll bring it on. That's one of my faves.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks,
See ya.
Kath. Bye.
And before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links for how to connect with Jen at www.fitnessmama.com/podcast, including also how to grab your spot for the free online class. I'd love to hear from you. Have you recently had a baby? And how have you found your after-birth recovery? Or perhaps you're pregnant. Let me know how many weeks you are. Send me a DM on Instagram at FitnessMama. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and I look forward to you joining me next week for another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at FitnessMama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.